The fire crackles low, casting flickers across the old timber beams as the wind taps gently against the shutters. You are wrapped in a woolen cloak that still smells faintly of ash and damp earth. Your fingers curled around a cup that's long gone cold. The stone beneath you is cool, worn smooth by centuries of boots and blood and silence. Tonight, it is your turn to remember. You see, you weren't born noble. No lance tournaments, no grand speeches. You were handed a mace the size of your own arm, shown how to swing, and sent into the smoke. You never asked why the flanged edge had to crush bone like that, or why your mail shirt always reeked of last week's battle. You just swung again, until it was quiet. Tonight, you'll step back through the haze into narrow passageways, icy dawn fields, and torchlit halls where men fought face to face. No archers, no strategy, just steel on flesh, iron on skull. From sharpened farming tools to flails that could rip a jaw from the hinge, you'll carry them all, one by one. And if you enjoy strange memories like this, that make you laugh a little and sigh even longer, maybe consider tapping subscribe, but only if you think it's earned. I'm here every night, with stories no one ever told you in school. The room is cold, not with the sharp chill of wind or winter, but with the slow, heavy breath of stone. You feel it before you open your eyes, the dampness that clings to the air, the soft weight of wool across your shoulders, the faint ache in your back from sleeping atop something too solid, too old. The air smells of rust and animal fat, of leather darkened by years of sweat, and oil soaked deep into timber. You shift, slowly, as joints remember their purpose, your palm brushing against something rough, and then smooth, then rough again. A handle, a shaft of wood, the first thing you ever held in this place. The first thing they pressed into your hand before they taught you how to use it. You open your eyes. It is still dim. Only one slit of light seeps through the high, narrow window set beneath the arch of the wall, just enough to catch the edges of steel. Racks of weapons stand like statues all around, euros of iron heads and sharpened curves. Wooden hafts leaning close like monks in cloaks. They surround you. Not threatening, not kind, just present, waiting. Your breath is slow. You inhale through your nose, and the scent deep in soiled chainmail. Linen gone stiff with use. The earthy sharpness of dust unsettled after too long. Your tongue tastes ash, faint but real. Someone must have lit a forge nearby. The heat hasn't reached this room yet, but the air knows it's coming. You sit upright, pulling the cloak tighter, and the sound of movement echoes back from the stone. One creak, then silence. You are alone here. As usual, the cot is nothing more than a plank and some hay stuffed beneath a tattered cover. And as you rise from it, your bare feet press into cold stone, worn smooth where hundreds of boots have passed before. You stand slowly, not from pain, but from ritual. You know how mornings begin here, with silence, with weight, with choices, the first of which is always the same. You turn your head toward the racks. The closest weapon is familiar, a simple arming sword, balanced, modest, its blade polished, though not recently. You could take it, but not today. Not for what waits beyond the door. Today demands something different. You walk the length of the rack, fingers trailing across hilts, flanges, hammerheads, pointed hooks. Each grip has memory, each weight has a story, some longer than yours, some ending the moment they began. The light shifts slightly as a cloud must have passed beyond the window, softening the glow just enough for your eyes to find a shape further down the line. A morning star, not ceremonial, not polished for parade, but used. The flanges dented, one slightly bent, the shaft wrapped in leather so dark it's nearly black. You reach for it, and your palm fits around the grip as if no time has passed. It's heavier than you remember. Or perhaps you're just more honest with yourself today. You lift it, slowly. Feel the weight pull at your shoulder, your spine straightening not from pride, but from necessity. This isn't the weapon of choice. It's the weapon of acceptance. Your other hand finds a mail shirt folded beside the bench. It's stiff with age, the links cold, but familiar. You pull it over your head with practiced effort, the sound of metal brushing metal low and steady. It settles over your frame like a second skin, heavy and coarse, the edges brushing your thighs as you move. You adjust the collar, tighten the strap. You don't need a mirror. You know what you look like, just another body among many, wearing steel not for glory, but because bare skin doesn't last long in places like this. You take a breath. It doesn't feel like preparation. It feels like remembering. A second shaft of light begins to creep across the floor now, cutting through dust motes that dance slowly in the air, each one moving like ash floating after fire, slow and without purpose. You watch them for a moment, your hand tightening slightly on the haft of the weapon. You let the silence grow, not because you are afraid of it, but because you know once you leave this room, there will be no silence left. Your boots rest near the foot of the cot, worn, cracked at the heel, stitched once near the toe. You slide your feet into them without thinking, tightening the straps as your fingers find their old rhythm. Outside, something shifts, the creak of a cart, a gull crying, the sharp clang of metal. You recognize it all without needing to see. Someone is sparring, someone is sharpening, someone is praying. You do not know who. It does not matter. You move to the door. The handle is carved wood, smoothed by generations of hands. You place your palm on it and feel the chill pass through your fingers into your wrist. And for a moment, you pause, not from doubt, but from memory. Every time you've stepped through this door has ended the same way, with bruises, with breath, with red, but not today. Today, perhaps, there will be something else. You press the handle down, slow and steady, and let the hinges groan their ancient greeting. The hallway beyond is long, lined with faded banners and sconces holding nothing but smoke. You walk forward, your steps soft, the morning star balanced beside your hip. The light follows behind you, stretching long across the stones. No one speaks, no one waits. The world ahead is quiet and sharp. The morning air is thick with wood smoke and the faint copper tang of sweat soaked into straw, the kind of scent that clings to you long after you've left the yard. You move slowly down the corridor, boots brushing against old rushes scattered along the flagstones. Your fingers flexing slightly around the grip of the morning star, now resting against your shoulder. It creaks as you shift the weight, the metal head swinging just enough to remind you it is still very much alive in your hand. Not an ornament, not a relic, but a tool waiting for its use. You descend the steps, stone worn smooth beneath your soles, and the world outside opens gradually, a wide courtyard. Sun just beginning to push through the high mist. A crow perched on the corner of the battlement, watching with too much interest. You cross toward the center where the circle has already been cleared, sand raked, buckets waiting. A few men gathered to watch, their arms folded, faces unreadable. The man you're here for is already standing there, bareheaded, arms wrapped in cloth, morning star like yours hanging loose from his grip. He is older, broader across the chest, with hands that look like they could snap an axe haft in half if they chose. His eyes meet yours, not with threat, not with welcome, but with tired familiarity. You've faced each other before. Maybe not in this yard, but somewhere like it. You step into place. No signal is given, no horn, no shout, just breath. And then motion. Your first swing is light, more gesture than strike, testing the space between you. He counters by turning his shoulder, bringing the spiked head across low. You feel the wind of it as it misses your thigh by inches. The sound it makes, just air and iron, is enough to remind you what happens if it lands. You pivot, raise your weapon, swing again, and the impact rings through your bones as flange steel meets steel, the shock traveling up your arm, into your neck, and down your spine. The sound echoes off the stone. There is no elegance here, no flourish, only weight and timing and the memory of how bones break. You step again, this time more deliberately, your heel digging into the sand. He swings high, and you duck, feeling the heat of the air as it parts beside your cheek. You rise and shove forward with the haft, not the head, catching him in the shoulder just enough to shift his balance. A breath. He grunts, tightens his grip, and brings the weapon down vertically. You raise yours in time, but barely. The impact drives your boots an inch deeper into the dirt. The noise is dull, not a clang but a thud, like wood striking wet earth. You step back, Breathe. The men watching do not cheer. This is not a spectacle, it is a lesson, a reminder, again. He comes, this time faster, and the morning star is a blur of iron and intent. You raise your own, swing to intercept, and the two collide with a screech of metal. A shard of one flange snaps and skips across the ground. Neither of you stops. The next exchange is closer. Tighter, no room to swing full, just short, brutal arcs of movement. His shoulder hits your chest, and for a moment your balance tilts, but you recover, bringing the weapon around in a low sweep that catches his knee. He stumbles, not badly, but enough. Another breath. You see it now. Not fear, not anger, just the strain of holding a weapon that wants to pull your body apart from the inside out. You circle. He follows. The air grows heavier, more humid. The sun climbing now beyond the towers, casting long blue shadows across the yard. You swing again. A feint this time, drawing his weapon out of place. He counters late, and in that half breath between steps, you bring your morning star down, fast, two-handed, into the curve of his side. It doesn't land clean, but it lands. He reels, not with drama, just with a sound, low, human. He drops to one knee. The head of his weapon digs into the sand. You step back. It is over, for now. The men at the edges nod. One tosses a cloth. Another gestures toward the basin. You do not speak. You do not look proud. You feel the throb in your wrist from where the impact jarred bone. You feel the sting at your temple, where sweat now slides past old bruises. You lower the morning star, its head now streaked with grit, and breathe as if the air itself might offer some small absolution. You step from the circle, leaving behind the sound of shifting sand, the scent of iron and breath and old muscle. The man rises slowly, already straightening, already preparing to do it again tomorrow. You return to the corridor, the morning star resting once more against your shoulder. You do not speak of what just happened. No one ever does. It is not the blow that matters, but the weight of knowing what it could have done. You sit on a low bench by the forge wall, the stone still warm from last night's coals, your shoulder pulsing faintly from the sparring, the kind of dull ache that doesn't demand attention but refuses to disappear. The air tastes of ash and blackened iron, faint hints of scorched hoof oil and sweat-soaked leather lingering beneath it all. You stretch your fingers once, twice, then reach for the axe laid carefully at your feet, its head resting across a folded scrap of cloth, not for polish, but to keep it from biting into the flagstone floor. You lift it slowly, letting the grain of the haft settle into your grip, palm to palm, wrist to wrist, feeling its weight speak to your joints like an old adversary come home. It's not a large axe, not the kind they mount over doorways or carry in parades. It's short, made for one hand, curved slightly where it shouldn't be, with a wedge-shaped beard and a deep chip taken out of one cheek. Not beautiful, not clean, but balanced, and too many stories clinging to the edges to count. You run your thumb along the back of the blade, careful not to meet the edge, and feel the shallow notches left behind by other lives' wood. Bone. Metal none, of which it distinguished between. You rise. Outside. The courtyard is quieter now, the early shuffle of squires and dogs fading into the thrum of noon. You step across the threshold into the light and let the sun settle on your shoulders, the chainmail shifting slightly as you move, its weight no longer separate from your own. You cross to the block, a simple post, chest height, ringed in old cuts, dark with time. You raise the axe once, feel the wind it carves as it arcs downward, feel the sudden resistance as it strikes into the wood. It lodges deep, splits the post with a satisfying tremor, and you hold the moment just before the axe falls free. You remember the first time it wasn't a post. The sound was different, not louder, just wetter, and the weight of the axe changed the moment it passed through something living. You pull the blade free and swing again, this time without hesitation. The motion smoother now, a rhythm returning to you like a chant you never meant to memorize. The edge lands true, splinters crack, you reset, again and again. The haft hums against your fingers with each strike, the vibration low, steady, Not painful, but not forgettable either. You aren't training. You're remembering how to hold it, how to breathe, how to keep your eyes forward when the thing in front of you stops looking like a target. The axe was never designed for style. It doesn't thrust, it doesn't feint, it doesn't whisper, it crashes, and when it crashes well, it ends things. Quickly, you take a pause, rest the head against your thigh. Watching the dust lift from the base of the post, a stable boy moves past the edge of the yard with a yoke of buckets, glancing once at the axe in your hand, then quickly away. You don't blame him, he's seen what it does, or what it leaves behind. The sharp doesn't frighten him. It's the blunt that does the curve where the axe can catch, not cut, and drag what it finds with it. You lift the blade once more and angle it toward the light, watching how the surface still holds the faint shimmer of steel beneath all the scars. The edge catches the sun, throws it back in a thin line across your arm. You've wiped it down so many times, but some things never come off completely. You grip it again and swing, not hard, not fast. Just enough to feel the motion through your hips and shoulders, enough to feel the haft flex slightly before it steadies in your palm. It's a dance that no one ever teaches, only learns after the wrist forgets how not to turn. The axe is a tool first, a weapon only when asked. You've seen it open helmets. You've seen it break arms in the middle of a shield wall. You've seen it strike into a man's ribs so deep the haft had to be twisted twice just to pull it free. It doesn't care about armor. It finds the place between. It always finds the place between. You lower it again and step back from the post, breathing evenly, letting the sweat cool across your spine. You don't need a crowd. You don't need applause. The axe isn't meant for ceremony. It's meant for distance measured in inches, in moments, in the line between now and never again. You carry it back across the yard, its head resting against your shoulder, the steel brushing lightly against the rings of your mail. You pause at the doorway, turn once to look at the sun, now dipping toward its slow descent. Then step back into the shadowed hall where the axe's weight fades once more into your bones. It hangs from your belt like a promise, quiet, reliable, unforgiving. The falchion waits where you left it, hung by a simple loop of twine along the back wall, its edge half hidden in shadow, but its shape unmistakable, the long, slightly swollen belly of the blade tapering to a tip that doesn't pierce so much as cleave. You step forward, letting your fingers brush lightly along the worn leather grip, smooth from use, darker where your palm has always rested. It isn't the elegance of a longsword or the reach of a polearm. It doesn't shimmer with nobility or inspire songs, but it has weight. It has a voice, and it cuts like hunger. You take it down with both hands and let the steel settle in your grip, the blade tilting forward slightly under its own pull, eager in the way that old weapons sometimes are. It is not balanced in the traditional sense. Its weight favors the business end, made for downward swings and deep, decisive bites into things that are not meant to resist. You carry it to the edge of the training yard, where the low sun streaks between the slats of the stable wall and the earth is packed firm with old blood and hoof prints. The air smells of horses and warm hay, with something faint and metallic curling underneath, old iron, damp leather, the memory of wounds now gone cold. You draw the blade fully from its sling and begin to move, slowly at first, your body remembering the arc, the timing, the sensation of swinging not to parry, but to end. You bring it up and across, diagonally from shoulder to hip, feeling how the blade pulls the motion forward, how the tip lags just slightly until it catches wind, then snaps clean through the air. It doesn't whistle like lighter blades. It growls. Each motion ends with a pause, a breath, then continues an upward sweep, a hook across the body, a downward hammer from above. There is no technique here that isn't shaped by instinct. The falchion was never built for duels, never made for courts. It belongs to ambushes and alleys, to the backs of carts, to the tight spaces between breath and blade, where speed is not as valuable as certainty. Its edge doesn't nick at bites, tears, shears. You remember its first test in your hands, the way it slipped through boiled leather as though it had chosen its target. The way it struck, not with a clang, but with a wet thud that silenced everything around it for a heartbeat longer than it should have. You pause and run your thumb along the back of the blade, the spine thick and dull, wide enough to catch a glancing blow, narrow enough to slide beneath an arm. You know its weight well enough to feel the difference between contact and kill. The edge isn't razor sharp anymore. It doesn't need to be. It wins through momentum, through the sheer force of motion, backed by muscle and intention. You adjust your grip and swing again. This time, imagining the shape of an opponent in front of you, not armored, not nimble, just someone holding something and hoping it's enough. You cut across the waist, then rise into the armpit, then back down through the shoulder, each strike completing the line that began before the last ended. One breath feeding the next, one blow giving way to another. You feel the power roll through your hips, your spine, your arms, and into the blade. The Falchion responding not with speed, but with trust. It needs you to mean it. It does not forgive hesitation. The training post, scarred and splintered, stands to your right. You turn toward it, plant your feet, and deliver one clean cut across the middle. The blade lands with a crunch, biting deep. You pull it free. Swing again. A vertical slash from shoulder to thigh, and the wood shudders beneath the impact. Not broken, not yet, but it will be. You rest the Falchion's flat against your shoulder, breathing through your nose, the heat rising now beneath your collar, your wrists warm, your back damp beneath the mail. There's something about this blade, this ugly, practical, brutal curve of iron that makes everything feel simpler. You don't parry with it. You don't warn. You finish. They say it was a peasant's weapon, that it came from butchers and woodsmen, that it was never meant for knights. Maybe that's true. Maybe that's why it's so honest. You walk back across the yard with the falchion in your hand and the scent of sweat and dust in your nose, letting the blade swing gently with each step. It doesn't shine, it doesn't impress, but it remembers. And when the time comes, so will you? The flail rests where it always does, looped over a nail hammered carelessly into a support beam near the stable gate. Its chain coiled loose like a sleeping snake, the iron head hanging motionless but heavy, as though waiting not for orders, but for the next moment of chaos. You step toward it, boots silent on the straw-covered stone, your breath steady now, the weight of the day collecting across your shoulders like a second mail shirt. The wooden shaft is short, thick, wrapped in dried leather that creaks faintly beneath your grip. You lift it, carefully, letting the chain slide over your palm with that familiar hiss of metal on skin. And already your wrist tightens from memory. This weapon doesn't ask for precision, it asks for momentum, and control that flirts constantly with the edge of disaster. You walk to the open yard, the sky above gray now, a wind pushing through the low courtyard like an old complaint, scattering dust and lifting the edge of your cloak. The flail swings gently at your side as you move, the chain swaying, the iron head catching glints of light with each pendulum arc. You find a wide space near the edge where the ground is firm, where old posts once stood and the sand is pressed smooth by 1,000 feet that came and went without names. You raise the flail slowly, letting the chain dangle, the head suspended in the still air, its silence louder than anything else. The first movement is light, a slow arc across your body, the chain obeying just slightly delayed, the weight pulling back, resisting, reminding you that the moment you overestimate your control, it punishes. You let the head swing forward and lift your arm, catching it with a twist that redirects its path into a tight, rising spiral. It swings up, over, and down again. The impact of the head against your target and old shield leaned against the stable wall, sharp, dull, and final. It doesn't bounce, it sticks, and for a second, the world stills. The flail is not for defense. It doesn't block, it doesn't parry. It slips past shields, curves around helmets, finds ribs behind mail, teeth behind visors. You swing again, this time with more force, stepping forward as your shoulder turns and the chain unfurls in the air, the sound of it cutting wind sharp and low. The iron strikes the edge of the shield again, and it shifts, tips slightly, its frame giving way under the force. You yank the weapon back before it can wrap fully, adjusting your stance, tightening your elbow. Control, always control. You remember the last time you saw it used in anger. The battlefield wasn't wide. It was a street narrow, stone-walled, bodies packed so close you couldn't even lift your arms without brushing against someone else. You saw him ahead of you, face hidden beneath a dented helm, the flail raised high, the chain spinning once, then dropping fast through a gap in Amon's defense. The helmet cracked open like a shell. The sound wasn't heroic. It was hollow, wet, the kind of sound that doesn't echo, because the world doesn't want to remember it. You exhale and swing again. The chain arcs high this time, the head rising above your shoulder before descending in a whip-fast motion that jars your elbow. The weapon rebounds off the target, snapping back toward you, and your wrist catches it mid-air, turning the motion inward, redirecting it in a tight circle. You're sweating now, not from heat, from the focus, the precision, the tension that builds with every motion. Because with the flail, mistakes don't just land on your enemy, they come back. You lower the weapon, let it dangle again, the iron head rocking gently like the pendulum of a clock you've never trusted. There's something almost living about it, how it responds not just to action, but intention, how it senses hesitation and makes it dangerous. You begin a slow rotation again, spinning the chain around your wrist once, twice, then lifting it into a figure eight that you guide with shoulder and breath. The rhythm calms you, the repetition grounds you, each arc a whisper, each catch a conversation between skin and steel. The yard is empty now, just you, just the weapon, just the wind curling through the broken slats above the stable roof. You finish with one final strike, a hard downward motion into the earth, letting the iron bury itself half an inch into the packed dirt. You leave it there, embedded, standing upright like a statement. You breathe, one hand on your belt, one hand open. You step back from it, and in the quiet space it leaves behind, you remember why it is not the most favored weapon, but always one of the most feared. The mace is cold in your hand, heavier than the morning star, shorter than the axe, with a different kind of promise. It does not curve or swing or split. It drives, it punctuates, it lands with the weight of something that doesn't care if you flinch. You run your thumb across the flanges, each one thick and squared, not honed for sharpness, but for force. The edges are dulled, yes, but not from neglect, from use, from hitting too many things that didn't yield, from breaking through plate and mail and bone without the courtesy of slicing. This isn't a weapon that ends fights with grace. It ends them with finality. You step outside again, into the kind of wind that pulls at your sleeves and moves like it's searching for something it once left behind. The sun is already low, casting gold across the stone yard, making every piece of iron glint like something holy. You walk to the center slowly, each footstep steady, the weight of the mace pulling your shoulder downward just enough to remind you you're not here for ceremony. This isn't practice anymore, it's remembering. You raise the mace once, feel the resistance as it lifts, not from mass alone, but from history. Every time it shattered a forearm, every time it crushed a helm flat against the skull beneath. You swing it forward, not in full strength, just enough to taste the air it cuts, the low hum of metal displaced in motion. It doesn't whistle, it doesn't cry, it lands, with a thud that resonates not through the ears, but through the wrist, the elbow, the shoulder, into your spine. You bring it down again on a broken training post, and the wood splinters slightly, not shattered, but bruised. You adjust your stance, widening your feet, anchoring yourself into the earth, and this time you lift from the hip, driving downward, full force. The impact is deep, cracking the surface of the post, sending a small puff of dust into the air. It feels right, not satisfying, not glorious, just inevitable. You take a breath through your nose, slow, even, your lungs full of dust and smoke and the smell of old hay. There is no beauty in the mace, no elegance in its motion. It does not dance. It ends. You recall a time when it met a helmet, the steel crumpling like parchment, the scream caught in the throat before it could rise. You remember the weight of it after that, how it felt heavier somehow. Not with metal, but with consequence. The mace doesn't miss because it doesn't require precision, only presence, only that half step closer, that narrowing of the distance, that heartbeat of patience before the strike. You swing again, a side arc, horizontal this time, and feel the recoil in your ribs as the head strikes the post and rebounds. You steady yourself, not with thought, but with muscle. letting the motion flow back into your legs. The mace is not quick, but it does not have to be. It does not rely on deception, only certainty. You carry it the way a blacksmith carries his hammer, not for show, but for purpose. The shape is plain, iron head, 6 flanges, short grip, wrapped hilt. But in your hand, it becomes something different, something final. You rest it against your shoulder, the haft warmed now by your grip, the flanges dusted with splinters. The light has begun to dim, the shadows lengthening across the yard, stretching like fingers across flagstone. The others have gone. No one lingers when the mace is out, not out of fear, out of understanding. You walk back toward the barracks slowly, the mace balanced along your shoulder, your boots trailing lines in the dust. You don't need to test it further. You already know what it does, what it has done, what it will do again. You pass under the arch, the wind curling past your face like breath from a long tunnel, and the door closes behind you with a sound that feels too loud after so much silence. You place the mace back on its rack, metal touching metal with a muted ring. You look at your hand, fingers raw, lines deepened, and you flex them once to be sure they still close properly. They do, just barely. And tomorrow, when someone asks which weapon feels the most personal, you won't speak. You'll just point, not to the blade, not to the chain, but to the blunt thing that never needed aim, just intent, the one that never missed. The club lies forgotten beneath the rack, half buried in dust and old straw, its presence unimpressive, almost pitiful beside the gleaming edges and ceremonial polish of more refined tools. But when you reach down and draw it out, the weight tells the truth that the wood never cared to hide. It's heavy, thicker near the end, smoothed by calloused hands and years of blood-soaked repetition, stained dark with age, wrapped at the grip with leather long since hardened into cracked ridges. It doesn't shine, it doesn't need to. It's not a weapon meant to intimidate at a glance. It's meant to end without ceremony. You walk toward the edge of the yard, the club resting across your shoulder, its balance ungraceful but familiar, dragging slightly as your arm swings low. There is no elegance in the club, no balance of weight and geometry, only the simple promise of pain delivered through force. It speaks not in the hiss of a blade, but in the blunt silence of broken ribs, in the hollow sound of wood meeting flesh, and the way the world seems to go quiet after a single clean strike. You reach the practice post, not because it needs further splintering, but because this weapon needs something to absorb its intent. You take a step forward, feet set wide, shoulders loose, and bring the club down in a clean, heavy arc. It lands with a dull crack that vibrates up your arm, into your elbow, and along your spine. Not painful, just deep, an echo that reminds you there are no half measures when you swing something made only to punish. You lift it again, turn slightly, and deliver a side strike that connects with the post in a way that isn't sharp or dramatic, but definitive. Wood groans, splinters crack. You hold steady. This was never a knight's weapon. It never earned a name. It never hung above a hearth. It was held by those who had no better option, those who fought in back alleys, or along the side of the road, or beside carts overturned in mud and panic. It is the weapon of the desperate, of the angry, of the ones who knew they might not survive, but would make sure someone else didn't either. It asks for nothing but a strong grip and the willingness to step closer than comfort allows. You swing again, this time harder, and the club bounces slightly off the post, the recoil deep and jarring. But you absorb it without thought, your body already aligned to its rhythm. The impact leaves a clean dent, not from edge, but pressure, slow and overwhelming. This weapon doesn't slice through armor, it crushes it, warps it inward, lets the bruises finish what the strike began. You lower it and breathe, your chest rising slowly beneath the weight of chain, your fingers wrapped tight around the haft, your skin warm, rough, and smudged with dust. You remember using it once, in the dark, no torchlight, just firelight behind you and the heavy breathing of someone too close. You hadn't meant to reach for the club, but it was there, nearer than the sword, closer than the knife, and your arm moved without asking. The man fell before he made a sound. You don't know where the club landed, head, neck, chest. It didn't matter. What mattered was that he didn't rise again. You didn't swing twice. That's what the club does. It makes second swings unnecessary. You lift it one final time, just to feel the heft again, and carry it back toward the armory door, the head brushing occasionally against your thigh as you walk. Rhythm steady, every step echoing faintly in the cooling stone passage. No one watches, no one needs to. The club carries no honor, but it is honest. You lean it back beneath the rack, almost where you found it, tucked behind spears and shields and the pretenses of cleaner killing. And as you step away, fingers tingling from the aftershocks of use, you know this is not a weapon people fear before they see it, only after it's too late to matter. You return to your chamber as the sun begins to lower behind the stone wall, casting long bars of amber across the floor, and the cool shadow of the day follows behind your steps like a dog too tired to lead. The clang of weapons in the yard grows faint, muffled by thick stone and distance, until the world narrows once again to breath, fabric, and the quiet creak of leather at your belt. You sit slowly on the edge of the cot, one hand already reaching beneath the folds of your tunic, fingers brushing against the hilt of something small, hidden, and far too familiar. It is not a weapon for the open field or the dusty yard. It is for thresholds, for narrow alleys, for moments when there is no time to swing. The dagger slides free without effort, its grip warm from your body, the short, broad blade catching the light in a flash of dull gray steel. No ornament, no etching, just the flat truth of sharpened iron, steady and silent. You turn it slowly in your palm, watching how the edges shimmer, how the point stays true no matter how you angle it. The blade is clean, but not innocent. Nothing carried this close ever is. You remember every sheath you've ever kept it in: boot, belt, sleeve. None of them matter. The weapon doesn't care where it sleeps, only where it wakes. You test the edge with your thumb, careful, just enough to feel the bite of its honesty. It is sharp, always. A single pass over leather is all it needs to remember its purpose. You stand, adjusting the dagger in your grip until it disappears once again beneath your cloak, resting flat against your ribs. There, it waits, not to be drawn with fanfare, not to be shown, but to be used when every other option has already failed. This is the weapon you reach for when surprise matters more than reach, when breath is close, when no one is watching, or everyone is. It moves in silence. It ends without witness. It does not announce. It punctuates. You step out into the passage again, your gait unchanged, your hand free, but your chest aware of the weight just beneath the fold of wool, the slight pressure where steel meets skin. You walk the corridor toward the storeroom, past empty hooks and half-filled buckets, until you reach the side alcove near the kitchens. It's quiet here, the sort of quiet where footsteps don't echo and shadows form shapes if you let your eyes linger too long. You draw the dagger again, not for use, just for presence, for memory. You hold it upright, then flip it downward, letting the point align with the soft spot just beneath the sternum muscle. Remembers the target long before your thoughts catch up. Neck, side, groin, base of the spine. The dagger is not choosy. It finds what it must. You practice a motion or two, not elaborate, not theatrical, just turns of the wrist, flicks of the elbow, half steps forward that close a gap with nothing more than a shift in breath. It's not about strength, it's about intent. A weak arm can drive a dagger just as well if the tip is steady and the will is clear. You turn again, slipping the blade back beneath your cloak, and exhale softly, the quiet sound disappearing into the fabric of the corridor like breath into wool. There was a time you used it, close enough to see the man's eyes. He wasn't charging, he wasn't prepared, he was speaking. You don't remember what he said, only that the moment you moved, the blade entered between words. He didn't scream, he didn't have time. The blade did not pierce bone, just silence. You held it in until his knees folded, then pulled away and stepped aside as if nothing had happened. That's how the dagger works. It's not battle, it's punctuation. You return to your room with the steps of someone who carries nothing, though your ribs know better. You remove the blade again, wipe it once with cloth, place it beside your cot within arm's reach, and let your hand rest lightly across it one last time. It's not for tomorrow, it's for the moment after tomorrow forgets to wait. And if anyone ever asks how you made it through that alley, or that standoff, or that night in the cold when steel outnumbered thought, you won't explain. You'll only rest your fingers on your side and let them guess. Because the dagger doesn't brag. It doesn't shout. It just finishes what fear begins. You return to the armory after dusk. The air outside tinged with firewood and damp stone. The torchlight flickering low along the corridor walls, as if uncertain whether to stay or surrender to the dark. Inside, everything is still racks casting long shadows, blades sleeping quietly against oiled leather, the scent of metal and tallow thick in the air. You walk past the familiar row, long swords and maces, spears stacked with care, and stop before a narrow drawer fitted deep into the workbench. Where the lesser-used weapons rest, you slide it open, the wood groaning softly, and reach inside to retrieve something few ever ask for, a strange, heavy blade with a thick spine and jagged notches running its length, like teeth carved into steel. The sword breaker is not a blade for killing, not at first. It's a weapon for ending another weapon. You lift it carefully, the notches catching the firelight, casting soft crescent shadows across your palm as you adjust your grip. The handle is short, wrapped in hide, rough but secure. And the blade, though not sharp in the way others are, feels eager, as if it has waited too long for someone to move it again. You carry it out into the open hall where the stones have cooled and the wind slips in through the high slits, carrying the sounds of the night-distant hooves, a muffled shout, the hush of wings sweeping past the roofline. You set your feet wide and lift the blade before you, turning it slightly to feel the balance shift toward the notched edge. It's not meant to cut clean, it's meant to catch, to trap, to twist. You swing once in the air, low and deliberate, the blade resisting at first, then pulling forward like a hook through cloth. The motion is awkward, but firm, like prying open a chest that doesn't belong to you. You bring it back across your body, twisting your wrist at the final moment to catch an invisible sword between the grooves. In your mind, it's there, a fine blade, lighter, faster, caught and locked. You move again, slower now, guiding the blade upward in a rising arc that turns into a tight hook. You step forward with it, arm driving through, and feel the imagined resistance of metal being trapped, held, and wrenched away. That's what the sword breaker does. It doesn't meet its opponent with equal elegance. It stops the dance, it interrupts. You keep practicing, adjusting your motion each time, pairing it with small feints of the offhand or shoulder, learning again how close you must be for it to matter. Closer than comfort, closer than reason. You can't wait for an invitation when you carry this weapon. You force the opening. You stop after a while, breathing steady, chest warm beneath the padded gambeson, sweat just beginning to rise beneath your collar. The blade rests now against your leg, the notches catching the torchlight like little mouths frozen mid-snarl. You remember watching a man use one in a duel knot on a field, but inside a cloistered courtyard where two men circled like hounds, and one had only this strange tool in hand. The other wielded a sword longer, finer, sharper, but in the third pass, the sword breaker turned, caught, twisted, and the better blade snapped near the hilt with a sound that silenced everyone who had gathered. No blood, no scream, just steel betraying steel. You return the blade to its place slowly, carefully sliding it into the oilcloth sheath, then into the drawer, tucking it back beneath the others as if returning a secret to its hiding place. It is not for show, not for many, but for those who know. It is more than a trick, it's a message, that elegance can fail, that strength can be bent, that no blade is safe once this one meets it, and when you step away. Closing the drawer behind you, you carry nothing in your hands, but your fingers still remember the weight of the thing that was never meant to kill outright, only to break what others trusted too much. You rise early, before the sun has breached the roofline, when the chill still clings to the flagstones and the walls carry the quiet breath of ash cooling in the hearth. Your fingers are stiff, not from fear, but from the way iron settles into the joints after too many mornings like this one. Across the courtyard, where the mist clings low and chickens mutter softly in their pens, the practice field waits. You walk with your shoulders hunched from the cold, passing the old trough where buckets of sand sit with their rims frosted silver. Hanging on the post ahead is today's companion, A flail, wood, iron, chain. You take it in both hands. The wooden shaft fits into your grip with the worn smoothness of a broom handle, but heavier, thicker. The chain, no more than a foot long, dangles loosely from the top, 3 links twisted from long use, ending in a stubby iron ball set with cruel little studs. You test its weight by letting it hang, and it swings gently in the morning stillness, pendulum-like. With a rhythm you feel more than hear. You step onto the packed dirt, adjust your stance, and swing. Not wide, not fast, just enough to feel how it moves. The head lifts, arcs, returns, and for a moment it seems almost graceful. Then again, harder this time. You rotate your wrist and guide the weight into a slow loop, letting the chain lag behind and snap forward at the last instant. It hits the wooden dummy with a low, dull thud knot like a sword's impact, but more like a drum beat with purpose. The flail is not about elegance. It's not about precision. It's about rhythm, momentum, timing. You practice the turns, forward and backward, letting your shoulder fall into each swing. Learning to feel the delay between motion and strike, how the chain follows its own logic and must be coaxed rather than forced. The head loops once, twice, then collides again, this time leaving a splinter in the dummy's side. Your feet move automatically, step in, swing wide, recoil, reset, over and over. The sky grows lighter, mist fading into steam as the sun warms the roof tiles. But your thoughts stay fixed on the sound the flail makes, that deep, quiet percussion, that whisper of chain before it speaks with iron. You know this was once a tool before it was a weapon once used to thresh grain, beat straw from husk, wear down the chaff and reveal the harvest. You picture it in simpler hands, coated in dust, wielded in rhythm to feed a village. But here, in your grip, it feeds something else. A memory rises of a man on horseback, flail in hand, riding into chaos. His weapon spun not wildly, but with grim purpose, each turn deliberate, each strike aiming low to unseat, unbalance, break the rhythm of the enemy. The flail moves where the sword cannot, over shields, around blocks, behind helmets. You remember how it sounded then, not loud, not screaming, but like the steady, brutal echo of resolve, one link, one turn, one blow, repeat. Your arms begin to ache, not sharply, but with that deep, growing weight that says the work is real. You stop to catch your breath, the flail hanging limp again by your knee, chain twisted slightly where it rested mid-swing. Your fingers tighten on the handle, your knuckles pink with cold, and your breath rises in faint clouds as the wind picks up again, rustling the straw targets, stirring the leaves just beyond the fence, nudging the iron head gently as if inviting another motion. You answer. You step forward and raise the shaft once more, beginning a slower series now, guided not by urgency, but by memory and form. You sweep it low, then loop high, drawing the arc across your body, tracing its curve in the air with practiced precision. The weight returns, settles, then coils again. It's a dance without music, a rhythm without song, but your body knows it. It always has. Somewhere in the deep folds of your back, behind the ache in your shoulders and beneath the muscle around your elbows. This rhythm lives, and when you finally lower the flail, placing it carefully on the practice post, letting the chain rest without tangle, the quiet returns. No applause, no breathless victory, just stillness, the kind that settles only after motion has ceased. You roll your wrist once, twice, and close your eyes for a moment, not to rest, but to listen to the wind, the soft crackle of a dying ember, the echo of iron kissing wood, and the silence it leaves behind. You lift it with both hands, surprised not by the weight itself, but by how the weight hangs differently, not in the handle but in the spiked head that pulls ever so slightly forward, off balance, as if already in mid-swing. The Morning Star is quiet, despite its terrible name. Its iron head is studded with short, square spikes, not razor-like, not elegant, just thick and brutal, meant not to pierce cleanly, but to rupture, to crack, to crush. You cradle it like one might cradle a basket of stones, wary of the way it shifts and leans and rests against your wrist with patient menace. The shaft is of aged wood, wrapped in leather, not decorative but worn from use, with old sweat soaked into the grip and a darkened spot near the base where fingers have settled again and again. There's no inscription, no crest, no flourish. It is a weapon that asks no questions and gives no answers. You walk out across the field, boots pressing softly into the earth, which still holds the dew of dawn and carries a faint scent of damp grass and cold ash from yesterday's fires. The sky is pale blue, streaked with fading clouds that the wind has begun to smooth out, and the low hum of a waking village drifts up from beyond the tree scarts creaking. Dogs pacing, a door slamming once, then silence. You pass under the wooden arch, where the training dummies stand in a crooked line, patched and restuffed, each bearing the scars of 100 lessons and 1,000 small failures. You take your place before one, not in haste, but in silence, as if meeting an old friend whose name you've forgotten, but whose face you remember. The first swing is never fast. You lift the morning star above your shoulder, feel the head sag slightly, then let gravity take it forward in a slow, curving descent. The impact is muffled but deep, like someone thumping a barrel with the side of a boot. The dummy rocks gently, its base creaking beneath the blow, and the iron head rebounds lazily, the spikes catching the light just briefly before you bring it back and reset. Again. A little faster, this time you let the weight carry through, not trying to control it, just guiding it as one might guide a heavy bell on a loose chain. The sound is deeper now. The wood gives a crack, small, but real. You breathe in and notice how your arms absorb the vibration, elbows locked, shoulders squared, back slightly hunched. The Morning Star is not a weapon you wield with flourish. It's not a fencer's toy. It is honest, heavy, slow, and final. You shift your stance, plant your right foot farther back, and begin a set of rising strikes angled, not vertical aimed where a shield might leave a gap or a helmet might slip. The spiked head moves like a falling branch, purposeful, bending slightly with each motion, and your body follows it, adjusting not for beauty but for balance. Your breath comes slower now, not from exertion, but from rhythm. You are no longer thinking about the strikes. Your mind is somewhere behind your eyes, watching but not directing. You think about the soldier who carried this last, or the one before him, what his hands looked like, whether they trembled in the cold, whether he swung in silence or with a shout, whether he struck once and never again, or struck over and over until the field was quiet and the crows began to gather. You pause, let the weapon rest against your leg. The iron taps softly against your shin and you look down, seeing the dark outline of your own shadow stretch long across the grass. Around you, the world has lightened, but not by much. The sun remains hidden, and a low wind begins to move between the trees, brushing past the wooden posts with a sound like whispers dragged across stone. Somewhere, a bell rings. Not near, not loud. Just enough to let you know that time is passing. Even here, even in this forgotten corner of training and repetition and sweat. You lift the Morning Star again and begin a slower, set-wide arcs, broad turns, letting the full motion pull from your shoulders down through your hips. Each swing follows the last without pause, without rush. The spiked head carving invisible shapes in the air before returning with its dull, patient authority. The dummy leans now, slightly off-center, a strip of fabric peeled back to reveal straw beneath. You don't notice. You're moving again. In silence. In the rhythm you didn't know you knew. And when you stop, because the ache has crept up from your forearms into your elbows, because your grip has begun to slide from sweaty, you set the weapon down beside the wall. You don't wipe your brow. You don't speak. You listen. To the creak of the gate in the wind, to the breath in your chest, to the faint ticking of your own heartbeat, like hoofbeats in the far distance. The Morning Star leans against the wall, its head still heavy, still stained, still quiet. It is not finished, but it waits. So do you. You take it carefully from its peg, noting how the chain dangles with a loose grace, not tight like a rope, but heavy like something that remembers violence. The wooden shaft is short, fitted to your hand. wrapped in cracked leather that has grown stiff and dry from years of sun and sweat. The head swings lazily at first, just a solid lump of iron with small, blunt studs. No sharpness, no finesse, just density, just potential. You stand still for a moment, letting the chain hang, letting the head settle. And in that stillness there is a kind of negotiation, as if the weapon is deciding whether to obey or betray. The air is still, thicker now, warmer. Dust curls at your feet as you shift your stance, and the faint sound of bees drifting near the herb garden hums just beneath the silence. You raise your arm slowly, feeling the shift in balance as the flail moves, not with you, but after you. Delayed, reluctant, like a shadow that refuses to follow unless compelled. Your first motion is small, just a swing forward, gentle, a test. The head arcs forward, then down, strikes the packed dirt with a low, padded thud, and sends up a puff of dry earth. You pause, adjust, then again, this time harder. The chain tightens at the last second, jerking the head in a sudden snap, and you feel the recoil in your wrist, your elbow, your shoulder. There's no elegance here, no rhythm to mimic. The flail does not care for form or posture. It is a weapon that punishes hesitation and misjudgment. So you learn slowly, one swing at a time, letting the chain teach you its lag, letting the weight instruct your timing. You strike a target dummy now, padded in old cloth, its chest stitched over with cross laces that hold the stuffing inside. The iron head strikes off center, twisting at the last moment and hitting not flat, but corner first. It spins the dummy slightly, making it sway like a startled monk, and the chain clinks faintly as it retreats, curling back around your wrist like a half-tamed serpent. You adjust your grip, planting your feet wider, and begin a sequence of arcs diagonal, then vertical, then a side swing meant to catch a knee or a shoulder. The flail is not kind. It doesn't allow for clean repetition. Each strike behaves slightly differently, depending on angle, on force, on how tightly you clench the grip, or how slowly you reset your stance. But as you move, again and again, something begins to settle. Not precision, not control, but understanding. You move with it, not against it. You stop trying to own it and begin to flow alongside it, like walking beside a mule that doesn't like to be pulled. The iron head strikes now with more certainty. You swing, and it follows. You guide, and it answers. Not politely, but predictably. You begin to trust it, not as an extension of your arm, but as a companion with its own opinions and its own delays. You don't fight that. You adapt, you lean into the curve, you start before you need to. You let it finish where it wants. There is a strange kind of calm in that. Not dominance, not conquest, just coexistence with something dangerous. The day warms, the sky shifts slightly. A few birds lifting from the rooftop where they've been nesting under the eaves. You stop to watch them for a moment, letting the flail dangle again, the chain swinging with a soft, metallic chime, barely heard over the breeze. Your hand is raw now, not bloodied, but tired, fingers stiff, palm damp. You switch hands, try again with the left. Feel how clumsy it is, how foreign, how every motion requires thought instead of instinct. You smile faintly, not because it's funny, but because it's humbling. Then you strike one more time. The dummy receives it with a dull, groaning sound. The post behind it shifts slightly. The chain wraps loosely back around the shaft, and you lower it once more, not in defeat, not in weariness, just in understanding that every weapon has a soul, and the flail's soul is not rage, it is not power, it is tension, it is patience, and above all, it is timing. You set it back on its peg. It does not swing this time. It simply rests, as if it too needs a moment to breathe. You lift it from the stone bench, noticing the way it sticks slightly to the grain of the worn cloth beneath, a trace of oil clinging to its studs like dew on thorns. The morning star feels heavier than it looks, but not unreasonably so, just enough to remind you that it's more than wood and iron, more than tool or ornament. It's a decision, forged and fastened with purpose, and as it rests now against your open palm, you feel its weight not only in your hand, but somewhere deeper, along the chest, the neck, the place where tension waits quietly behind the breath. The shaft is made of ash wood, seasoned and darkened, wrapped with narrow bands of leather that are cracked and curled in places, but still firm. The iron head at the top is simple in orb, thick with short. Sharp spikes, some clean, some bent slightly from past encounters, but all still cruel in intent. There are no moving parts here, no hinges, no chain to delay or confuse, just one hard certainty, one terrible unity of impact. You walk slowly, barefoot across the cold floor of the courtyard, where pale light slips through the slats of the gate. Dust gathers in soft clumps near the corners, and the faint smell of dried sweat clings to the wall where old training pads lean, stitched and split in places from years of use. In the center of the yard, a straw dummy stands alone, propped upright with a wooden spine hammered deep into the soil. The morning star hangs by your side, not yet moving, not yet eager. You pause near the edge of the circle and breathe, steady and quiet, until the silence feels full again. Then you raise your arm, not quickly, not dramatically, but with the careful intention of someone who knows what happens next. The shaft rises with you, the iron head tilting slightly, and you feel the shift in balance begin. The first swing is horizontal, shoulder height, and it lands with a deep, splintering sound that sends the dummy staggering backward, the leather wrapping twisting loosely around its midsection. Bits of straw burst out like breath from an old pillow. You adjust your stance, grip a little tighter, then swing again, this time from above, an overhead arc that comes down with weight rather than speed. There is no subtlety in the motion, no flick of the wrist or clever turn of angle. The Morning Star does not ask you to be clever, it asks you to commit, and so you do, again and again. The head slams into the straw, into the wood, into the cloth, each time delivering not just impact, but intention. And with each strike, your shoulder pulls tighter, your elbow begins to ache, and your breath comes a little faster, a little sharper through the nose. You feel the sweat gather along your spine. You feel your grip loosen, then tighten, then slip again. Still, you swing, not furiously, not blindly, but steadily, purposefully, until the sound of each strike becomes part of the rhythm of the yard, like the slow beat of a low drum. Thud, crack, breathe, step, swing. The straw is everywhere now, floating like golden ash in the sunlight, clinging to your arms, to your knees, to the folds of your tunic that now smells of metal and old oil. You stop, let your hands fall, let the weapon hang again. You roll your shoulder once, slow, deliberate, and feel the dull pull of strain where the muscle stretches under skin. The dummy leans forward slightly now, lopsided and torn. One of its support beams has cracked at the base. You know it won't stand through another round. You know it doesn't need to, because this lesson isn't about the target. It never was. It's about the space between you and the narrow, quiet moment before force is chosen, before motion is released, before pain is given permission. The Morning Star teaches you not how to fight, but when and why. As the sun lifts a little higher over the low wall, you wipe the back of your hand against your brow and set the weapon down on the bench where you found it. Not with a drop, but a placing, as though handing it back to something older than yourself. The leather grip is warm now from your hand. The studs are darkened slightly with dust and use. You look at it once more, not as a warrior, not as a student, but as someone who has shared an hour with a quiet teacher who never speaks, only strikes. Then you step away, slowly, without looking back, letting your shadow fall behind you in the light, silent and long. You run your fingers once along the edge of the blade, not to test it, no. You already know its sharpness, but to feel that cold, familiar chill that clings to good steel in the early hours of morning. The axe is simple, wide-headed, balanced. Not a lumber tool, but a thing forged for cleaving through something far less predictable than wood. Its haft is slightly curved, built not only for grip, but for momentum, the kind that builds quietly in the shoulders and then releases all at once, like a breath you didn't realize you'd been holding until it was gone. You carry it from the wall, across the beaten courtyard, past where the crows gather near the wet stones, where someone must have slaughtered a pig just after dawn. The smell of blood has not fully faded, and the flies drawn to it, like soldiers to a feast still, hover thick above the drain. You ignore them, Step into the round circle marked by chalk and dirt. Wait for the quiet to settle, then lower the axe, its head tapping gently against your calf, as if reminding you that everything sharp must be handled with softness first. The first swing is always slow, not because your muscles are stiff, though they are, but because the axe does not respond well to impatience. You raise it, feeling the full weight rise with your spine, and then bring it down not on a body, not on flesh, not even on straw, but on a low post wrapped in thick linen and bound with rope. Something close enough to reel without needing to bleed. The sound is not a clean crack, but a thick, dull thud, the kind that reverberates into your heel, travels up your thigh, settles somewhere behind your ribs, and makes you feel, just faintly, the echo of what such a blow could mean. You step to the side, swing again, this time with the other hand guiding, pulling the blade into a diagonal line across the post. Fibers split. A faint slice of air follows behind. Then again, from the opposite side, your shoulder begins to warm, a slow burn beneath the skin, a warning to pace yourself. This is not a contest. This is communion, between you and a blade, and the thing that waits to be broken. The axe does not care about beauty. It's not like the sword, which rewards precision and elegance. The axe is closer to truth. It demands commitment. It asks for certainty. If your grip is unsure, it will pull wide. If your weight is off, it will jar your bones. If your mind drifts, even for a breath, the blow will fall wrong, so you do not drift. You do not guess. You breathe, steady and deep, letting the rhythm find you. Swing, step, swing, reset, breathe. You lose count of how many. You stop measuring the sound. You just continue, and in the motion. You notice strange things, the way the cloth wraps slightly tighter on one side, as if resisting. The way your left wrist begins to tremble slightly when the blade catches too early. The way your jaw tenses, not in fear, but in focus. There is no anger here, no rage, just repetition, just form, just the meeting of wood and cloth and edge, eventually. The linen begins to sag, the ropes loosen. You pause, not to rest, but to observe. The post now bears grooves where the blade has carved again and again. Shallow valleys of violence etched like tired wrinkles into its surface. You run your thumb along one, feeling where the grain has split, and without meaning to. You feel something else, kind of quiet, not in the world around you, but inside, somewhere below the sternum, where the noise of waking thought has finally fallen still. You finish with a final swing, not because you must, but because it feels right to close it there. The axe comes down one last time. The sound is clean, deep. It lands where you mean it to, and when you lift it again. The edge is dulled only slightly, the shaft worn only at the point where your thumb presses most. You return it to its hook on the stone wall, not gently, not carelessly, but with the familiarity of someone who has held something many times and will hold it again. You look once more toward the post. It still stands, but it remembers, and so do you. The day has begun to brighten now. The chill fades from the stones, the crows are gone, and your heartbeat, for once, no longer rushes ahead of you. It keeps time, with the world, and with your breath. The morning star rests where you left it, hung by its leather loop against the wooden post near the outer barn. The iron head tilted slightly in the morning light, catching small fragments of sky between each spike, as though it remembers the things it was once asked to do and now waits, patient and still, in case it's ever asked again. You reach for it slowly, not because you're afraid, but because even in the quietest hour, there's something sacred about touching a weapon that was never meant to be swift, never meant to be elegant, only final. The handle is smooth, wrapped tight in worn leather darkened by sweat and age. Long enough for two hands, but weighted so that even one can guide it if the arm is strong and the motion certain. And the chain it creaks faintly, just once. When the head drops free, the movement soft but unmistakable. The way a single footstep on cold tile might announce someone you thought had already gone. You carry it into the yard, where the ground is uneven, packed with gravel and straw, the kind of surface that resists steady footing but still absorbs the sound of your boots. muffling your steps until you feel like you're walking in a memory rather than a moment. There's no wind yet, only the breath of last night's air still clinging low to the earth, brushing against your legs with the weight of dew. And you pause briefly as you lift the morning star again, letting it sway gently at your side, the head spinning once, slow, deliberate, before falling back into stillness. It doesn't ask for movement, it waits for it. You begin with small circles, not swinging, not testing, just letting the chain tighten and loosen between your grip and the spiked head, feeling the resistance grow and fade, learning again how long it takes to build momentum, and how short the moment is before that momentum becomes something you can't easily stop. You step forward slightly and let the weight carry outward, arcing the weapon into its first full motion, and it whips through the air with a low, humming sound, a kind of metallic whisper that speaks of speed more than force, danger more than noise. You don't strike anything yet, not the post, not the shield. You simply move with it, around, then across, then behind your back, switching hands mid-step without letting it falter. It's not a dance, not exactly, but it is something like rhythm, something that forces your breath to slow down and your center of balance to stay low, grounded, firm. The spikes on the head aren't especially long, but they don't need to be. Each one ends in a slightly blunted tip, not made for slicing skin, but for crushing the thing beneath it, wood, iron, bone. You remember that the Morning Star was never about precision, never about duels or pageantry. It was for armor, for the man who thought his plate would save him. And sometimes, it did. But other times, when the swing was timed just right, when the motion curved instead of crashed, the iron would find the thin seam between chest and shoulder, between helm and collar, and force its way in, not by sharpness, but by sheer, unapologetic pressure. You begin to practice strikes Nauslow at first, measured arcs that descend at an angle, then twist before rising again, the chain pulling against your wrist slightly, reminding you that control isn't about stiffness. It's about yielding in the right way at the right moment. You feel the head collide once with the edge of a target board, the impact sending a hollow thud through the courtyard, a sound that echoes off the stone walls and returns to you in fragments, as though the yard itself wants to remember the shape of it. You don't flinch. You tighten your grip and swing again, this time from lower down, letting the chain wrap slightly before snapping free at the end. The motion tighter now, sharper, and more deliberate. You lose track of time. Your arms begin to ache, not with exhaustion, but with familiarity. The kind that comes from doing something over and over again until it begins to feel like the body remembers it even when the mind forgets. Your tunic sticks to your back, warm and damp, but the air remains still, undisturbed, somewhere nearby. A cart rolls past, its wheels crackling faintly against the gravel path, and a bird calls once from the roofline above the barn. But nothing else moves. The world is watching, or waiting, when you finally stop. The Morning Star hangs low in your hand, its head just brushing the ground, dust clinging faintly to the iron between each spike. You hold it there for a moment longer, letting the silence settle fully around you, not out of reverence, but out of understanding. This weapon does not need attention. It does not need fame. It only needs to be held and guided and released at the right moment to do the thing no one else can do. You return it to its place, looping the strap once more over the old post, the chain coiling slightly around itself as the weight comes to rest. The leather creaks, the iron sighs, and in the silence that follows, you feel your breath finally slow, your muscles loosen, your thoughts soften into something that no longer needs to speak. The axe you're handed this morning is not the kind swung in battlefields or sharpened daily in village smithies. It is heavier, more deliberate, not designed for chopping wood or fending off cavalry, but for shaping judgment into flesh. Its haft is thick, worn smooth where countless hands have gripped it before yours. And at the top, the blade rises broad and crescent-like, an edge so carefully honed it catches the morning light in a thin white line that wavers as you shift your wrist. You do not ask where this axe has been, because its weight tells you. Its silence speaks of courtyards paved in blood, of names that once ruled lands but now live only in the breathless moments between drum beats. You carry it not in pride, but with the steadiness of one who understands that tools do not choose their tasks. Only the hands that wield them do. The yard outside the stone keep is quiet, save for the rustling of banners that hang half limp against the stone towers. The air smells faintly of charcoal and damp wool, and somewhere nearby, a priest murmurs softly, not to you, but to the task itself, as if offering the old iron a final blessing, or perhaps an apology. The ground beneath your boots is not fresh earth or grass, but layered planks of wood, stained darker near the center, sealed by sun and memory into something that looks more like ritual than function. You step slowly across it, the axe resting lightly against your shoulder, though it never feels light. There is a man kneeling at the far end, robed not in chains but in linen, his back straight, his breath even. You do not know his name. That does not matter in this moment. You are not meant to know. You are only meant to remember the motion. You set your stance carefully, adjusting your feet so they find the slight depressions carved into the platform by those who have stood here before. Your heels firm, knees soft, arms relaxed but ready. You take one breath, then another, feeling how the air moves in and out of your chest, how it presses gently against your ribs, and how the weight in your arms begins to shift forward of its own accord, as though the axe is not swung, but simply released, allowed to fall in the shape that years of practice have carved into your muscles. The blade does not sing, nor scream, nor spark. It simply moves, a single arc, a moment suspended, and then it ends. The crowd does not cheer, no voice rises, only the sound of the blade striking wood and the faint scattering of birds startled from the towers breaks the stillness. You lower the axe slowly, breathing through the silence that follows, and step back. Two others move forward now, one with a cloth, the other with a shallow basin, and they tend to the scene with a speed that speaks of long practice, as though this were merely another task before midday meal. You do not watch them. You do not need to. Your part is done. You return the axe to its resting place, a long wooden chest lined in wool and ringed with iron bands, where other tools of this kind are kept beneath thick canvas wraps, marked not with names, but with symbol skis, flames, circles. You lay it down gently, as if placing a sleeping animal into its den, and you press the lid closed with both hands, listening for the thud of the latch, the hollow echo of the box sealing away something that cannot be entirely locked. The corridor you walk afterward is dim and narrow, its torches flickering low against old stone, casting soft amber shadows that move more like breath than light. You do not speak as you pass the guards. They do not meet your eyes. These halls are not built for voices. They are built for quiet, for the long, low thoughts that stretch out behind the work done here, the kind of thoughts that have no shape but weigh heavily in the chest all the same. You step through a final archway and into the courtyard, where the day has grown warmer and the scent of cooking fat wafts in from the baker's ovens across the square. A pigeon pecks at crumbs near the edge of the well. Life, always, resumes, and as you reach for the tin basin to wash your hands, the cool water rushing over your knuckles and pooling at your fingertips, you realize that the axe has left no mark on your skin, no blood beneath your nails, no tremor in your wrist, only a faint impression in your muscles, as if the moment is still curling quietly inside you, waiting to be remembered. You dry your palms on a strip of linen, then turn toward the sunlit path that winds past the chapel and down into the orchard where bees hum lazily above fallen blossoms. No one follows, no one needs to, for those who carry the axe. The weight walks beside them always. You wake earlier than usual today, your body stiff from the stone floor and the lingering weight of yesterday's silence, and as you reach for the woolen wrap near your feet, still faintly damp from the mist that seeped in through the cracks last night, you already know what hangs from the wall behind you, thick-handled, metal-crowned, and heavier than anything a single word could resolve. The mace. It doesn't gleam. It doesn't need to. Its dull iron head, ribbed with blunt flanges and speckled from age, carries a different kind of warning, one that whispers not in sharpness, but in impact. In the way bones remember what cloth forgets. You swing it once, slowly, feeling how it drags the motion down toward the earth, how it changes your center of balance, forcing your steps to widen, your hips to shift, your breath to slow. The courtyard waits just outside, cloaked in a soft morning haze that curls low across the flagstones. wrapping around boots and wooden barrels, blurring the boundary between waking and memory. You pass the baker's boy hauling flour, his shoulders hunched not from the sack, but from the knowledge of your path. His eyes drop as you pass. The mace doesn't clang. It thuds, wrapped now in a strip of old cloth. You carry it slung over your back like a farmer's tool, though everyone here knows it grows no wheat. Only silence. The guards let you through the lower gate without question. They never ask where you're going anymore. You walk the edge of the training field, where younger men swing swords too light for war and shout too loud for listening. You do not stop. The ground hardens as you descend, shifting from tilled mud to worn stone, to the narrow echoing passage behind the chapel, then finally to the covered arch where your task begins. A man stands there waiting, his hands bound, his feet bare, his chest rising and falling with a rhythm slower than fear. He knows the mace was not made to kill swiftly. That is not its purpose. It is a tool for ending arguments, for removing the need for persuasion. It speaks the way avalanches do, sudden, deep, final. You do not speak to him. The words, if they were ever yours to offer, belong to another time. You step forward, one foot after the other, placing your weight gently with each motion, so that nothing startles, nothing slips. You pull the mace from your shoulder, the cloth falling away like old bark from a branch, and grip it tightly with both hands, not to dominate, but to steady the breath between your ribs. You raise it, not high, not slow, but just enough to feel the potential shift in your shoulders, the gathering of momentum that the flanges demand, and then you let it move. It lands not with a sharp crack, but with a thick, echoing percussion that ripples down through your arms, your spine, your knees. The sound feels older than the stones around you. The task ends quickly, quicker than expected. There is no crowd today, only one scribe, sitting on a bench nearby with ink-stained fingers and a quiet nosebleed. He doesn't look up. He doesn't need to. You lean the mace against the wall as you pour water into the iron bowl, rinsing your hands first, then your forearms, watching the rivulets darken and spin down the grooves in the stone before vanishing into the soil. You do not dry them. You let the wind do it, carrying the chill up your sleeves as you step back into the world above. Somewhere in the chapel, bells ring for a mass you are not expected to attend. The path leading back to the main hall winds beneath a trellis of withering vines, their tendrils knotted like thoughts you haven't had time to untangle. You walk slowly now, the mace slung once again across your back, though lighter somehow, as though the act of using it has drained its weight into the ground. The sun has risen higher, warming the stone steps and chasing the mist from the corners of the walls. Children laugh in the distance, chasing a goose through an open field. Someone strikes flint behind you, lighting a lamp in a darkened room. The sound clicks twice, then flares. You do not look back, and as you cross the courtyard once more, your shadow stretching long before you, you wonder, not for the first time, whether the mace forgets what it touches, or if it carries memory deep within its iron, too deep for language, too heavy for dreams. You find it waiting beside the fire, propped upright in a cracked stone trough where the blacksmith left it cooling overnight. And though the flames have long faded into embers, the haft still holds a gentle warmth, not from heat but from purpose, from the work it's meant to do. The blade is single-edged, wide, curved like a falling crescent, polished to a dull gleam but never shining too brightly. No one wants it to sparkle. This is not a weapon of war, not for battlefields or horses or bloodied flags. This axe is for endings that must be clean, not kind, but necessary. And as you lift it in both hands, feeling the slight flex in the ashwood shaft, you already know the weight has nothing to do with metal and everything to do with memory. You do not wear armor for this task, only a dark woolen tunic, old gloves, and the silence that wraps itself around your ribs like a second skin. The yard is already quiet when you step into it, paved with gravel and edged by a low stone wall where pigeons gather in the morning, their small feet ticking across the granite like tiny drums. A priest waits in the far corner, eyes cast down, hands folded so tightly they shake. He does not speak to you. No one does. The condemned man is already kneeling, his back straight, his breath slow, a single lock of gray hair dangling over his brow. He has not cried, not yet. And you admire that, though you do not let it change the rhythm of your walk or the calm of your hands. One of the guards steps forward and offers a folded piece of parchment, a last confession written by someone else's hand, and you take it without looking, not out of disrespect, but because it has no weight in this moment. You move to the block, now slick with melted frost, and lay the axe across your lap as you kneel to check the grain of the wood. The height of the platform, the steadiness of the base. Everything must feel right, not perfect, not clean, but balanced. You rise slowly, lift the axe in a smooth arc, and rest it gently across your shoulder as the priest begins a soft prayer, half muttered, almost forgotten in the cold wind that stirs the hem of your tunic. The man does not flinch. He closes his eyes, exhales once, and leans forward as if surrendering not just to judgment, but to gravity, to time, to the truth that some moments cannot be escaped by words. You raise the axe, not quickly, not high, but with all the stillness you can gather. And in that breathless pause before motion, the world seems to hold itself together like glass just before the shatter. Then, in one sweeping stroke, you bring it down not with violence, not with hate, but with finality, the kind that echoes not through sound, but through silence after it. The task is over in seconds. The head falls to the side, the body slumps forward, and one of the guards steps forward with a cloth already stained from others before. You do not watch. You are already stepping back, already setting the axe beside the wall, already pouring water over your hands from a rusted jug that gurgles as it empties. The blood clings to the creases of your knuckles, and for a moment, you wonder how many hands before yours have held the same handle, swung with the same weight, walked back across the same gravel path. No one speaks. The pigeons are gone. The priest whispers a final line of prayer and walks away without turning back. You return the axe to the trough, leaning it gently against the black stone as the sun breaks through the clouds, casting a pale yellow line across the edge of the yard. In a few hours, someone else will need it again. You hope it stays there unused for one more day, but you do not believe it will.